The Bruins get a late goal from Grzelcyk as they edge the Maple Leafs in a nail-biter in Boston. Welcome into Rinkwide Toronto, sponsored by Bodog, free casino games and sports odds. It is time to play at bodog.net. It's Rob Wong, joined alongside by David Alter, who comes to us from TD Garden, where the Bruins hold off the Maple Leafs 4-3. It's always an incredible game when these two teams meet up, and yet again tonight in Boston. A very playoff type of game, Dave. You were obviously there just based off of the atmosphere on the TV. You definitely looked like the fans were in it. The rivalry still strong between these two teams, despite the fact that they haven't met in the playoffs in quite a few years now.
Yeah, and you know what? This gave me a lot of chills, a lot of memories of a lot of the playoff series that I have covered, whether it was in sports radio or freelancing or whatever I was doing. Of course, I was in this building in 2013 when the epic collapse happened, but there was just a lot of those same kind of vibes with how intense it is. I think those playoff years, the 2013s, the 18s, the 19s, they just permeate. Like, you can tell the fans just remember and they feel those vibes. And it was certainly electric here at TD Garden. Just a save that Matt Murray made early on too. Like, the crowd was just up in it. It was really exciting to watch. Easily the most entertaining of the game of the year by far as I'm concerned, of any of the games that I've attended, whether it's home or road. It just had that playoff-like atmosphere. You could tell both teams really wanted to give it to each other, and you saw everything you'd want to see in a hockey game. Goals, a fight, physical toughness, stars producing, some good goaltending at times. It was just the full package on display tonight at TD Garden for sure.
Yeah, definitely one of those games where, whether you played it on Saturday night, Tuesday night, Friday night, I don't think it would have mattered. These two teams were going to show up and give it their best. And, I don't want to make excuses here for the Maple Leafs by any means, but considering they were without TJ Brody, Pontus Holmberg did not play. It was their third game in 4 nights, seventh game in 12 nights. I think to go toe-to-toe against the best team in the league, especially at 5-on-5, maybe we'll get to those numbers shortly. I mean, I thought it was maybe the most impressive effort of the year, despite, a regulation loss. Like, that's about as good as you can look, I think, even with the situation that the Leafs found themselves in, to, not get any points in this one and still look really good considering all the factors.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can take the positives for that standpoint for sure, but there were some pretty egregious errors where it kind of felt like Toronto had control at times and gave it away. And the big takeaway, the big reason why Boston is where they are in the standings and are on this pace to perhaps make a claim for the best winning or points percentage and wins record of any team ever, is because anytime Toronto made a subtle mistake, no matter how big or small, Boston just hounded them. They were right there for a grade A chance immediately. They gave Toronto no shifts off. I've seen a lot of games this season where there'd be a small mistake here or there, but it would just go to a team or a talent where they wouldn't get burned on it as much, where Boston just came right back at Toronto with any small mistake they made in their own zone or deep in or on a pinch. If you made any subtle position that you move or anything that you shouldn't have done, Boston just burned you the other way. Even if they didn't score, it was just a solid chance the other way. They hounded Toronto, and that's why the score was what it was. And Matt Murray made that incredible save on Bergeron, I believe it was, early on. That really kind of set the tone for Toronto to kind of stay in there early on, because it looked like Boston was trying to get the jump on a team that's played a lot in a short period of time and looking to bounce back after their first regulation loss this season against Seattle a couple days ago. So full marks to Toronto the way they were, but Boston showed why they're the class of the league by far. It was a close game, but Boston just was aggressive on that attack and jumped on all of Toronto's mistakes, whether they scored or not.
Oh, it was definitely not a perfect game by any means by the Maple Leafs, and we will get to those turnovers coming up here shortly. But let's begin hearing from the head coach. Here is Sheldon Keefe, who says his team did battle, but still have plenty of things to work on.
Well, two things. I mean, I think the big thing, obviously, is that, we can play with any team in the league. You can do it on the road. You can do it, 3 games in 4 nights and all those kind of things. At the same time, you you can't beat yourself when you're playing any team in the league for that matter. But a team of this caliber, you can't give them freebies, and we did. So there's certainly two big things to take away from us here today. One, well, really, frankly, both very positive because you got to learn these lessons. Sometimes the hard way, and you like to think our group is past some of these things, but clearly not. But, you got to smack right in your face tonight.
Oh, it was a smack in the face for sure.
Yeah.
As 3 turnovers directly leading to goals, like shortly after. Not exactly a case where you turn the puck over and then a minute later it ends up in your net. Like these were very quick strikes by the Boston Bruins, and 3 ones like I mentioned. The first one by Morgan Rielly in the first period that leads to a goal by Patrice Bergeron. Rielly spoke post game and obviously says they have to take better care of the puck.
Yeah, I think turnovers being one of them, myself included on the first goal, myself especially on the first goal, and just managing the puck. I thought, if you look at their goals, we're kind of almost handing it to them. So other than that, I thought, there are some good things, but obviously you want to limit the mistakes that lead to opportunities against.
So there's Rielly talking about the turnover that he made, Dave. And, we'll hear from John Tavares coming up in a moment here. And he had the late turnover there in the third period that led to the goal.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Connor Timmins, who was aside Rielly tonight and had a pretty egregious one himself. And, for a guy like Timmins, just quickly, I mean, clearly he was put in a spot tonight. It's been without TJ Brody for a bit here, but he's put into a spot where he's got to go up against the top line in the league, arguably, and Marchand, Bergeron, and Pasternak. It was pretty evident that the Bruins were going to attack that pairing, and Timmins especially. And to make that play, to make that pass attempt there, a lot of Alex Galchenyuk memories, I think, surfaced from watching that pass attempt. But I think, having guys like Morgan Rielly and John Tavares being culprits of turnovers that leading to goals, I mean, that's kind of what Sheldon Keefe was talking about there in his clip, where it's like you would have thought maybe, we're starting to get past that. But when you've got 2 veteran players and 2 guys that are leaned on so heavily making mistakes, that's a tough look.
It is. And, I even asked Morgan Rielly afterwards if there was any sort of difficulty with the fact that he is getting a new defensive partner that he hasn't really practiced with. Like this, they had the day off, so they did a morning skate because of how tight the schedule's been. And they made changes on the defense. And Morgan Rielly has only been back for a few weeks and hasn't played to the level that he has played in the past. So he's still trying to get ramped up here, and he gets a brand new partner who didn't play the night before. So, it's not saying that the Leafs were kind of asking for it, but maybe the time to make a change isn't against a team like the Bruins. Maybe you have to kind of go with what's been kind of working. Not to say Jordy Ben was any better in that regard, but they could have gone with the Rielly Hall and Giordano Timmins pairs that they went with previously and stuck with that. There was like one shift where they did that. After both Timmins and Rielly were -3, they ended up finishing at -2. But it was certainly difficult to see that. Difficult to see the play Tavares made toward the end there, and have those moments. But like as I said, this was a game against a team that is phenomenally good. Like every year we talk about how Boston's due for a drop off, and haven't really watched a lot of Bruins games this season. There was that one early on when Boston was 10-1 and then they came over to Toronto. It was a very tight, low scoring game that Toronto squeaked out at home. But then in this second meeting here, like you could just see leaps and bounds that this is not an opponent anything like Toronto has played recently. And so maybe they can I'm not saying they're cheating, but maybe they're making plays that they just don't expect to get burned on in the same way. And we've seen some mistakes that just there's not the level of execution going back the other way to kind of have that quote unquote lesson learned, as Sheldon Keefe's talking about. So this is going to be one that they'll remember for a while. If they get into a playoff series with a team like the Bruins, this is going to be the footage that they're going to examine with a fine-tooth comb and learn here's what not to do. And so, you can be critical on it. There were some issues there. But also this is a really good team. Like I can't believe how good this Boston Bruins team is. On paper, it doesn't look like it, but when you see it in person, they're so cohesively placed. It's unbelievable to see. So, good on them. And the Stars had to pay, and now they have footage and real game experience to kind of learn from that in the next two meetings that they have against the Bruins.
Yeah, absolutely. The Bruins are a well-oiled machine, to say the least, and took advantage of a lot of the Maple Leafs' mistakes. And, just one more thought on Connor Timmins. I think it's pretty evident that, he was put in a spot tonight that was challenging. But, that play specifically, the Galchenyuk type of pass, if you will, like for me, that isn't a situation where a guy is, afraid of the moment. I think it's a situation where he's probably just trying to do too much. And, he's trying to make a play there. It was not the right play, obviously, but it wasn't as if, he got scared and fumbled the puck. Like, he just tried to do a little too much. And I think if you're a guy in that situation where, you've come to a new team, it's been great. Like, that's the thing. Connor Timmins, since coming to the Maple Leafs, has been exactly what they've asked for. He's done, a lot of good. But tonight it was just a case where, you just have to sometimes make the simple play, especially when you're a guy on the fringe. I know, as you mentioned, Jordy Ben got into the game last time, and, maybe that's the move come next week where,
or you hope TJ Brody's back. There's also
or you hope TJ Brody's back. But if he's not, I mean, maybe it's a case where, Connor Timmins unfortunately kind of played himself out of his next game, because that's how, these types of opportunities are right now, where if you're not contributing or you're not living up to the expectations, that there are some guys right now that can step in and take your role. And, if Jordy Ben wasn't healthy and TJ Brody wasn't healthy, then Connor Timmins probably is, penned in for the next outing. But I'm probably, kind of unsure at this point if he's going to be suiting up for this first game next week. But anyways, moving on to the final turnover that led to the game-winning goal. John Tavares turning it over at the blue line that led to Matt Grzelcyk's game winner with just over a minute left. Tavares spoke post-game about his late-game miscue.
I thought it was a pretty, obviously a pretty competitive game, pretty even, and really just came down to us making a mistake late. That's on me. Thought I saw Willie in the middle there, and got to be 100% sure. So I thought the guys battled hard. We had some really good opportunities. Had the lead, fought back, obviously against a team that's playing at an all-time level. And obviously I got to make a smarter play there, so that's on me. I thought the guys competed really hard.
So the interesting thing about Tavares is that he got teamed up with William Nylander there in the third period, Dave, as Mitch Marner moved back up with Auston Matthews, and that combination was put back together. We had obviously talked a few weeks ago about whether we might see that change again, and we've seen it sort of periodically throughout the middle of some games, but you're in a spot now where, Sheldon Keefe decided to go there in a game where, the Leafs were down a goal. It wasn't as if like they were down 3 or 4 goals and they needed a big spark or anything. What did you make of that decision by Sheldon Keefe to flip the top 6 in the third period?
Yeah, I think at that point, Auston Matthews is going good. They need the offensive explosion. The second line isn't getting the offense there, so why not give Auston Matthews another weapon and Mitch Marner? And really, at this point, you're trying to push for an equalizer. You're not necessarily worried about what's happening on the back end. So I had no problem with it. In fact, in Sheldon's post-game comments, he seemed kind of non-committal about if that was a situational change or something he might finally go back to for the next game. That will be very interesting. I think we've been kind of waiting for it, and maybe it's a possibility. Of course, Auston Matthews' injury was a big storyline heading into today, and missing the last 2 games, and for him to get that offense going and getting a goal in the fashion that he did is good. But at this point, a lot of the talk's been that his production's low. So if you want to get him feeling good, you give him the biggest weapon that you can have alongside. You just hope it doesn't come at the expense of all the other good things that the Maple Leafs have done with having Marner drive the second line and Tavares making that mistake with William Nylander there. So there's going to be a lot to digest to figure out if the pros outweigh the cons there, because for a while, the Matthews Nylander duo along with Tavares and Marner seemed to kind of be the perfect mix because of how well Nylander had been playing defensively. Nylander had some good shifts, but there were some costly mistakes on his end as well. Didn't necessarily result in goals, but they were pretty bad. There was the one where he was pinching and he fell, and that led to a 2-on-1 the other way. And I'm looking at that, and we're probably talking about that a lot if that results in a goal, but Leafs got a save there. So it's just going to be a matter of assessing Nylander's game and seeing if his game's gone down in this one, that they feel the need to make that change to go back to Marner and Matthews. But I don't know if that's the optimal look, or if a defensively sound Nylander is the better spread out look to give Tavares the offensive weapon that he seems to do better at with someone like Mitch Marner.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on heading into the game next week. But, as far as Auston Matthews goes, his first game back after a 2-game absence, and had that incredible goal to tie things up at threes in this one. Just, Magic Matthews with those hands. He spoke post-game about what it was like to be back on the ice.
And it wasn't bad. I thought, settled pretty well into the game, and, some good... I thought we moved the puck pretty well in the first period and just had it on our stick. It was, good to get back in a rhythm, especially early on, and then just try to carry that throughout.
I think it's just good to see that he has that type of ability to, shoot the puck in the net in that style, because this year, a lot of the talk, Dave, has been we haven't seen, too many Auston Matthews type of moments. There's, still flashes here or there, but tonight that was sort of vintage Auston Matthews. It's still a scenario where he's clearly not 100%. I think that's pretty obvious, and who knows if he'll ever get back to being 100% or even remotely close the rest of the way here. But I mean, it's just so obvious. You watch that game tonight and just how much he means to this team, and just every time out there, he's a threat, and you just weren't really getting that, the last couple of nights against Nashville, of course, and in the game before this one where, the Leafs offense just was not as, I guess, dynamic at times and not as threatening. But as soon as you add Auston Matthews, it just takes it up to another level every time he steps on the ice.
Yeah, it's that was an important goal for him, and it was especially the way he did it too, with that baseball. I called it a bloop single to clear the puck out of the zone to get it all started, and then jokingly rounding home to get the puck back, and rounding third to get the puck back, and scoring in a crazy defensive to offensive play. And you needed that. You needed that whoa moment. Offensive scoring moment from Auston Matthews. You just haven't had it in a while. Like his goals, his production, everything else was kind of subtle. It wasn't Auston Matthews like in the past where he would just dazzle and leave the crowd gasping from like how crazy a goal was. That just hasn't happened a lot this season, to be honest. And look, I mean, there's a lot of different narratives at play. There is a focus on the team being better defensively, and that's going to come at the expense of goals scored. Heading into this one, the Leafs were in a 3-way tie for second in goals against per game. Of course, they were playing against the team that's first in Boston, and so things kind of opened up a little bit, but Matthews getting a few days rest here. He was a little bit ill as well, and there was a bug going around the room. Being able to come out there and just reset and have that energy, even if it is something he's going to deal with injury-wise, which we don't know. This is where maybe doing load management is the way to kind of deal with it, like a la Kawhi Leonard, right? Looking at certain stretches where you're just going to have him sit back. If you're noticing a regression, pull him out and then put him in for the games where you need the results or the matchup augurs a Auston Matthews in the lineup. So it'll be interesting to see if they just kind of keep him going or if they load manage Auston Matthews, because it was interesting this morning. He said, or when he was asked if this is something he's going to deal with all season, he didn't dismiss that notion. He just said he's going to make sure that he's got the right treatment and he's on top of it. And when I hear that makes you wonder, okay, well, how are you going to get this guy optimized for the playoffs and still get him reps? And the Kawhi Leonard load management thing might be the only way around that. If it's something that's not serious but can flare up every now and then, like you really have to manage when those flare-ups are. The worst thing that could happen is that the flare-ups come at the worst possible time. So that's going to be really interesting to see. He looked good today. We'll see how he is over the next week or so.
Yeah, and the reality is you look at the standings now, even if the Leafs did get 2 points in regulation, it still would have been a tough mountain to climb against the Bruins, who have 2 games in hand and are now 11 points ahead of the Maple Leafs for top spot in the Atlantic Division. But Tampa Bay gets a win tonight, and they're now just 4 points back of the Leafs with 3 games in hand. So, second place in the Atlantic, clearly important because it gets you home ice advantage in the first round. And the Leafs and Lightning look like they're on a collision course for yet another first round meeting because, beyond the Lightning, the Sabres are 15 points back of the Maple Leafs right now. So it would have to be a pretty epic collapse by the Leafs and a pretty epic run by the Sabres to catch the Leafs. So, you're in a spot here where you want to have home ice advantage, but as you said, it's still a matter of you want to have everyone going into the playoffs optimally. If you have home ice advantage, but Auston Matthews is, worn out or really banged up, I mean, what is that kind of worth to you as opposed to maybe having to play an extra game on the road, in that first round series? So it's a tough position that the Leafs are in where they have a lot of things to kind of balance here and figure out, but I think it's pretty evident that they're headed towards another first-round matchup against the Lightning, which I think a lot of people have felt that way for a while with the way the Bruins have been going in this one. All right, let's get to the goaltending. And Matt Murray was great in the first, as you mentioned, made an incredible save at the start of the game. Brad Marchand just robbing him. Not so much in the second, gave up a couple of tough goals there. Wasn't tested much in the third, and the fourth goal by Matt Grzelcyk that won it. Bit of a tough play. Some guys in front of him, a bit of a screen on Matt Murray. But he was asked about that game-winning goal and whether or not he thought it might have been goalie interference.
Yeah, puck squeaks out to him, and just he's walking into one. Little traffic, little contact in front. Just wasn't able to come up with it.
Did you think it was goaltender interference?
I'd have to see the replay.
Yeah, that was a tough one for Matt Murray, of course. And Sheldon Keefe did take a look at it, Dave. But, that's a tough one, too, where if you get that wrong, you're on the power play, you're on the penalty kill. You have to pull the net, and it's just not a great spot to be in. But what did you think of Matt Murray? Because obviously his, last time out was really, really good against the Nashville Predators, and this one had a strong first 20, but that second period kind of turned the tide for the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, that was an incredible save he made early on, and that really kind of set the tone, and those are the kind of saves that they got someone like Matt Murray for. In what felt like a playoff environment, you were expecting those type of saves from your goalies, but then the second period and in the third period, there's a couple of goals from distance, and you're just like, oh, I've seen this story before. And so it was kind of a mixed bag for Matt Murray. I thought he was excellent in that first period. And then those couple of goals late, he should have had back, like he really should have. There are mistakes that led to those two, and people are focusing on that. But, you have a goalie that you need saves at the right times, and those were the times to make a save, especially when you had a lead at this point. So that's a tough one. Certainly, just it seems like every time we've come to a game where it looks like one goalie has kind of inched himself beyond the other one, a game like this happens, and then you're not sure again. So I thought it was an okay game for Matt Murray. Great start, not a great finish. Let's see what Ilya Samsonov does. Still the 1A, 1B, even if Murray is getting the better assignments here. This was his opportunity to kind of leap ahead of Samsonov, and I don't think he did it tonight.
No, I don't think so either. On the flip side, Linus Ullmark made some incredible saves as well to keep the Maple Leafs off the scoreboard. So, both goalies had some moments where maybe they weren't great, but then had some other moments where they were really, really strong. Interesting to see some lineup changes heading into this one. I think a lot of people were, questioning the decision to have Wayne Simmons in there tonight alongside Dryden Hunt. We did find out later, though, of course, that Pontus Holmberg and Bobby McMahon both under the weather as things are obviously filtering throughout the team. Auston Matthews was sick the other night. But, I would have loved to have known what Sheldon Keefe would have done had Bobby McMahon and Pontus Holmberg would have been available. Holmberg obviously would have been in the lineup, but I wonder if the way McMahon had played would have changed that. But Wayne Simmons gets in tonight and makes his presence known very early in this one, getting into a scrap with former Maple Leaf Nick Foligno, and then at the end of the second stood up for Michael Bunting, who got into it with Charlie Coyle and AJ Greer at the end of the frame. Bunting says he was happy to see Simmons back him up at the end of the second.
Yeah, nothing. I'm not even going to comment on that. That's just hockey, and things get emotional.
What'd you make of Simmons at least stepping up for you in that situation?
Yeah. Obviously, we're a team. We like to stick up for one another, and Simmer came right in for for me, and I would do the same for him, and we would all do the same for one another. So it's nice to see.
It's pretty clear, Dave. The guys on this team love Wayne Simmons. They love having him around. When he's on the ice, he does a lot of things that gets the team going. What do you think? If Bobby McMahon was available to play in this one, do you think he would have gotten in, or do you think Sheldon Keefe would have gone to the veteran in Wayne Simmons, considering this was going to be a playoff style atmosphere?
Yeah, that's a tough call because I don't know how effective Bobby McMahon would have been as a fourth liner. And so when you have Auston Matthews coming in, it moves Pierre Engvall down. You had Alex Kerfoot, who had to play in that middle spot. With Pontus Holmberg going up, Kerfoot would have moved up. You would have had the same Kerfoot, Kampf, Engvall line, and then it would have just left room for one player outside. Like Aston Reese would have been the left winger, like we know that for the fourth line in that situation. You would have had Holmberg, and then you have to choose. It was either going to be McMahon, which it could have been. It was either Simmons, who it was, or Hunt. Like you had to pick one of the three in that situation. I mean, this could have been a game where they needed a physical presence, but Dryden Hunt is supposed to provide that when Simmons can't. Bobby McMahon doesn't strike me as that guy who's supposed to be that guy. So I don't know how effective Bobby McMahon would have been as the extra winger there. And let's not forget, he was getting his opportunity because of the Auston Matthews injury. So I think from a pecking order, it's just my guess, we don't know for sure, that I think just for this game, I think Bobby McMahon would have been pulled out and you would have seen Wayne Simmons or Dryden Hunt in there anyway. Perhaps Hunt, but yeah, when both came in, that was just a matter of, this is who we've got. This is our personnel. There's a flu bug going around the team. And we didn't really notice it until when they started doing the line rushes. Like, oh, that's a weird looking fourth line. It's like, oh, that's because there's no Holmberg and there's no McMahon. So it'll be really interesting to see who ends up popping up sick between now and Tuesday, because once a flu bug goes around, you can bet it's probably going to hit some other people if it hasn't already. So we could see a lot of mixing and matching between now and Tuesday.
Yeah, we very well could. Interesting to see what's going to happen the next two times these teams play, and a lot of things could change, of course, with injuries and such. But, I feel like if everybody's healthy and Wayne Simmons gets into another game against the Boston Bruins, I think that might tell us what the thinking is behind that one. And, as much as everybody in this city, I think, loves Wayne Simmons and appreciates what he brings to the lineup, in these games, sure, he brings the physical elements and he's able to stand up for teammates. But as far as affecting the actual flow of the game, it's tough right now because the Bruins, as we said, they're a well-oiled machine. They've got a lot of guys out there that can skate and move the puck, and Simmons just does not have the foot speed. I mean, I think of that's second goal, I believe. Sorry, not the second goal. It was the third goal where Simmons can't reach the puck, and because he doesn't have the same skating ability as maybe a Bobby McMahon in that spot is able to get to the puck, and it's just out of Simmons's reach, and then AJ Greer is able to put it home. So I mean, there's just too many situations I find watching right now when Wayne Simmons gets into a lineup where just does not have the foot speed in certain spots to really keep up with the play. And it can definitely be a hindrance to his line, of course, and just the Maple Leafs as a whole. But they keep throwing him out in situations they believe he brings value. And, there's intangibles there that, are pretty clear that the team believes in. But interesting to see how that's going to shake out moving forward, because the Maple Leafs do have plenty of options now to work with in the bottom six. All right, coming up on Rink Wide Toronto, we'll get to the Bodog line of the day. We'll talk about Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren, who I thought were really strong tonight, and maybe we'll get into some media meal musings as well to wrap it up and find out what Dave had to eat at the Garden in Boston. Maple Leafs, though, lose it to the Bruins 4-3. You're listening to Rinkwide Toronto, sponsored by Bodog. Free casino games and sports odds. It is time to play at bodog.net. It's Rinkwide Toronto, pregame, postgame, every game.
Nearly 2.5 billion people are shopping online globally, and a lot of that shopping has been done on mobile phones. So how does your business website look and function on a mobile phone? Hey, it's Ray Ferraro. Right now, my friends at North Beach, along with their partners at Craft Growth, are offering small business owners and entrepreneurs a free website digital audit. So you can find out if your website is properly optimized for a great mobile phone shopping experience. E-commerce has never been more important. So visit craftgrowth.net and get your free digital audit. That's craftgrowth.net.
It is Rinkwide Toronto, sponsored by Bodog, the place to play free casino games and get the latest sports odds. Rob Wong joined alongside by David Alter from TD Garden. Bruins picking up the 4-3 win over the Maple Leafs. Let's get to the Bodog line of the day. And right now at Bodog, the Bruins are the favorites to win the Eastern Conference at plus 275 and favorites at plus 500 to win the Stanley Cup. No doubt about it, Dave. They are clearly the cream of the crop of the NHL so far this year. You've seen them twice so far this season, and pretty obviously they are just an incredible juggernaut right now. But if we look beyond the Bruins, who do you think is the second best team in the NHL right now?
It's a tough one. I think right now the Seattle Kraken are actually making a great case for being a great team. They've seemed to really put things together as of late and look like they're just on this heater right now. I mean, to be the man, you got to beat the man, and they beat the man a couple days ago quite handily for their first regulation loss in this building. And in the Boston Bruins, of course, is who I'm referring to. And I mean, Toronto's up there. Vegas has been up there for a little while as well. Carolina, like those are all really good candidates, but I'm just really liking the way the Kraken are playing right now. It seems like for whatever they put together last year, like if you want to compare expansion teams, if Vegas got it together very early, halfway through the first season of existence, Seattle feels like they're on that cusp right now through this portion of their second season of existence. So I got to give it to Seattle right now just because they've been on fire. And like, as we're recording this, I know they scored 6 goals on their first 7 shots against the Blackhawks. So I don't know where that game's going to end, but that's just wild. That team is on an absolute heater.
Yeah, they've now won 8 in a row. The game finished 8-5, but at one point they did have 6 goals on 7 shots on poor Peter Mrazek, who was the unfortunate goaltender in goal there for all of those pucks that ended up behind him. But yeah, it's the Bruins at the top of the NHL right now with 70 points. Then you've got a group of teams that are anywhere in between, 55 to 61 points. And Carolina has 61 points. Then it's the Leafs at 59, Vegas at 58, the Devils at 57, Jets at 57, Stars at 57, Kraken at 56, Kings at 56, and then the Lightning and Rangers both have 55. So, I mean, you could make a case for like 3 or 4 of those teams to say that they're the second best team in the league. I think, maybe people would point at Carolina, who have come on pretty strong here the last little bit. But the Kraken, a very good choice, I think, with the way that they are going right now and just with some of the teams that they have defeated of late. And the Bruins, one of the teams that they did defeat, picking up the 4-3 win over the Maple Leafs tonight, as we mentioned. And, we talked about one defensive pairing that was not particularly good in Morgan Rielly and Connor Timmins, but I thought one that was really good tonight was Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren. They didn't get the top line from Boston a whole lot in this game because clearly the Bruins were trying to pick on Connor Timmins and Morgan Rielly early in this one. But I think any concerns that people have about this duo come playoff time, not that one game is going to alleviate those fears, but it just continues to build up this resume, Dave, where these two guys continue to pass test after test after test. There's going to be mistakes. There always are. They're young. But I think, more often than not, you are not concerned about these two guys when they step on the ice. They are about as reliable as it gets right now for the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, Timothy Liljegren has especially looked pretty consistent. There's rarely a time, no matter who he's playing with, that you are concerned about him carrying the puck or him pushing the pace of play. He's just been a rock on that right side for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I think, I know that they like the Sandy Liljegren pair, but I would have liked to see him moved up in those situations where the Riley Timmins pair was struggling. I think that would have been the great adjustment to make in that point. Maybe Sandy and Timmins, you don't really want to kind of go to the well if they haven't done that yet. But I mean, that first pair was struggling, and I think an adjustment was needed in that moment in time. And I think Liljegren would have been someone who, A, Riley's played with before, and B, has shown very capable in that spot to kind of at least plug in some of the pressure that Toronto was facing in that top assignment. So they didn't do it. Sandy and Liljegren, as a result, had a pretty good game, but as you mentioned, they didn't get a lot of the tough assignments. There were a couple times, even though I like Rasmus Sandin's game as of late, there were a couple times where when he was carrying the puck in deep, he was being pretty ballsy with some of the decision making that he was doing, especially in and around Murray as he was taking the puck out against pressure from Boston, but didn't seem to kind of bother him. And maybe that speaks to the swagger that he's just that confident that he can pull that off. And what may have looked like a mistake didn't turn into a mistake in this situation. So they have been very good. I understand this temptation to not want to break them up, but maybe if there are some deficiencies, if you don't have someone like TJ Brody back to help stabilize Morgan Riley, that you may want to look at someone like Timothy Liljegren, who's played pretty good with Morgan Riley in limited time. So I think you have to look at that from a greater good standpoint to just kind of help out your top pair that's supposed to be your top pair.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, that might be my preferred option right now for as long as TJ Brody is out, to go with Riley and Liljegren, who, on the season at 5-on-5, they've played just under 96 minutes together, and they have a 54% expected goals for. The defensive numbers look pretty good as well. The only other, pairing, I guess, with Riley this year where he's had some better numbers is with Jordy Ben, but it's a smaller sample size at 70 minutes. And, not sure you want to be running that out too often. So I think, Riley Liljegren could be an interesting option against Florida next week when the Maple Leafs next hit the ice. But, it's just one game, and I know it was awful for Connor Timmins, and, the majority of his games have been pretty strong this year. If TJ Brody was healthy, he's in there, and I think your six defensemen are set. But, when you look at tonight's game, does that sort of give you, I guess, any ideas about maybe the fact that this team should add another defenseman? Or do you think when everybody's healthy that there just really isn't an area, unless there's a massive upgrade, to be, taking out a Justin Hall or taking out a Sandin or Liljegren? Like, I don't think for those two in particular, the latter two, you're getting rid of those guys for someone else unless it's a massive upgrade. But over a Justin Hall, right? Like, is that a guy that you would consider moving out of the top six in order to bring an upgrade there? Or do you think, this is kind of it? As long as everyone's healthy, you've got your six, and maybe you look for more depth, but maybe you're not out there searching for someone that can slot into your top four.
It's an absolute tough call because of the things we've mentioned in the past. The limited cap room, they may have room for one move, maybe two, but if they're going to swing for the fences and they want to get a top two, top four defenseman, it's going to be costly. They can't really afford to bring on someone with term unless they get rid of a player at depth the other way. And then you're worried about what you're doing to that mix in that situation. Everything the Leafs have done has been, especially in the last year, has been to keep all the assets, not to part with any roster players. So you have to be certain that the guy you're getting is a game changer on the back end. Someone that you're absolutely confident in is going to patch well with Morgan Riley or whomever you're going to play with in that top four. Because a depth guy, and I know Henny's been talking about guys like a Luke Shen, who, on 32 Thoughts, that Tampa's reportedly interested in him, and he was a good bit piece for them there. But I don't see how an extra defenseman, given the way some of these other guys have performed, is necessarily going to help if it's the only move when I still think they need help on the top six, and that probably should be where the priority is, even if the team doesn't necessarily agree with that spot. I know Kelly Yarncroke has performed really well in that spot, but even the shuffling on the top four, having someone like a Taylor Hall or someone who's like a skilled, speedy winger who can finish on the top six could be the difference against these types of opponents. These were the types of games where I thought a top six guy would have made a difference. And if you're going to prioritize something, I think that's where you have to go and not necessarily go top four unless there's an injury, and that that injury is going to create cap space between March 3rd, which is a trade deadline, and the end of the regular season, that you can load up and add guys that way, and then everyone's healthy come playoff time, that you could afford to make two moves like that. But I don't know if they're going to have that kind of luxury. It's really going to be about who's available or how much room they have to wiggle with. And I think that the top six might be the only room for anything like that.
Yeah, the cap is going to be tough, of course, even with Jake Muzzin on LTIR, because they've obviously used a bunch of that room right now. And, barring another injury, it's going to be tough to free it up. You might have to move someone out in order to bring in more salaries. So I think I'm with you still. It's the top six. That's what I'm looking at, especially in a game like this where it's so tight, to have another guy that can be a game changer. They had some opportunities, the Leafs did, in that third period to take the lead. They weren't able to do it, but, if you can find someone that can slot in alongside John Tavares on that second line that can, finish and put home the puck, I mean, maybe they're talking about a different result in this one tonight. But the turnovers definitely were a big issue, and I'm not sure that's something that you can go find someone that doesn't turn the puck over. That's not really an area you're looking for, because tonight, I mean, you would have thought, John Tavares, Morgan Riley, two trusted guys turning the puck over in this one that led directly to goals. But, we're getting closer to the trade deadline, so that's the good thing, that we won't have to keep speculating as much. We might actually, find some things out sooner rather than later, but still a little bit away is the trade deadline. All right, let's get to it. Media meal musings. I'm curious because you love your meal in Detroit. I'm curious, what are they serving up in Boston? Like, did you have some clam chowder? Did you have some lobster? Like, what were you dining on prior to?
Yeah, not very Boston specific like that at all. That was actually my restaurant night the other night. But tonight it was $10 US, the media meal for Boston, and it had some barbecue chicken. It had this pork, which looked pretty good, a salad bar, all the other stuff there. But the main event was a pasta bar. They have a pasta bar with chicken, shrimp, beef, onions, mushrooms, and 3 different sauces: pesto, a red pasta sauce, and a white sauce. And I did the works. I did all 5 of those toppings, and I did all 3 of those sauces for like a rosé/pesto hybrid. And it was quite fantastic. There was a peste, and then I forget the name of the other pasta that's kind of curly, like a pig's tail type of pasta. And that's the pasta that I had, and it was phenomenal. Al dente, of course, and it was delicious. That was by far, it was up there. And apparently the pasta bar is a staple of the Boston media meal. It's been something they've been doing for the last couple seasons now. It never used to be when I used to come here years ago, but I'm told this is the staple. And it's rivaling Detroit when it comes to the top tier. I'd say it's a good number 2 right now, like in that A tier along with Los Angeles. I think those are right up there. I mean, no one's beating Detroit anytime soon, I don't think. But Boston was fantastic. It wasn't Boston-esque, probably because the locals don't want New England clam chowder every day. But I certainly enjoyed it. It was very good. They had this Hungarian mushroom soup too, which was also pretty good.
Yeah, that's really the thing. I mean, you play 41 home games a year. You can't be serving up the same thing every single game, especially for the locals, who are the majority of the reporters at the game. I think they would get pretty sick of it. It'd be like geez, it's like the most Canadian thing ever, but it'd be like the Montreal Canadiens every single night serving up poutine or something in the medium meal. Like people would get sick of it. So while you would love to get a taste of Boston and the New England area, I can totally understand why they would not, have clam chowder every single night, but maybe have it on the side, right? Like maybe that's the thing. You make it available, and maybe it's not the star of the menu, but for people that want to come, road reporters that want to come get a taste, they can dine in on that. But as soon as you said pasta bar, like immediately I thought David Pasternak. Like, how can you not have some sort of a tie in there? Like it was just right on the tee. But I guess maybe that's a little too on the nose.
Well, I mean, I didn't ask. I didn't go into investigative ask if this was why. And certainly there was no David Pasternak statue made of pasta like they gave him at the All-Star game. I don't know if you saw that. It looked really strange. I mean, it's on brand, I guess. And especially with word that he might be extending soon. We'll see. It's interesting. So that could become a regular staple, but it's literally like you walk to the bar and someone on a skillet is cooking it, flipping it for you. It's like a full experience where you stand around and watch it. And it's on my TikTok. And it was pretty good. I'm looking forward to having it again in April when the Leafs are back here. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Now, I got to know before we go, have you had Dunkin' Donuts before? Because it was here in Canada. It didn't work out. Yeah, it didn't work out.
When was this?
I think it was back in the 90s.
I didn't know that.
Do you remember? I feel like it was, if I remember correctly. I was born in 1986, so... maybe I don't have as much of a memory, but I'm pretty sure they were in Canada. Someone can let us know at Twitter, on Twitter at RinkWideTOR, at DAlter, at RobWong34 listening to this. But have you had a chance to jump in on the Dunkin' while you're in Boston? Because that's kind of like a staple there.
It's the staple here. I've had Dunkin' coffee before. I might have had a donut back in 2005, when I first visited the city, because I've actually seen a couple of U2 concerts here in Boston. Back in 2005 on that old Vertigo tour. It's I've had Dunkin' is national. It's not Tim Hortons, but it's pretty national. I see it in almost every NHL city now, from LA to Boston. You see it everywhere. So I've had them. I've had it in New York as well. It's good coffee. It's okay. I mean, I think it rivals Tim Hortons in terms of the offering and the variety that way. They certainly seem to have more of options when it comes to their sandwiches and stuff. But I remember, funny story, in 2005, because it was one of my few trips that I've ever made to the States. I'm much younger. And in the North Station, which is their Union Station where the TD Garden is, there's a Dunkin' Donuts where I was waiting for the concert, and it was early in the morning because it was general admission, so you're lined up. And I ordered a double-double. At least what I thought was a double-double. But that double-double term was not known in the United States at the time. And I tasted it, and it tasted like just cream and sugar. That's all I could taste. I couldn't even taste the coffee. I was like, I ordered a double-double. What is this? It's a double-double to us is 10 creams, 10 sugars. I'm like, are you insane?
That is wild.
Why would anyone?
Yeah, I mean,
why would anyone
here
order
in
that?
Canada, some people order a Gretzky, right? So you get a 9 and 9, which is absolute insanity. I don't know.
That is not a great anything. That is not a great
I don't know if anybody actually drinks a Gretzky on a day-to-day basis, but the most I've ever had is maybe a triple 1 year, just to try it and see what it was. But it doesn't even taste like coffee at that point.
Even then,
you said.
Yeah, I would do 3 with an extra large at most. So it's diluted.
Yeah.
But
I heard a guy one time when I was in a gas station line order a small triple, and I just thought, you got to be kidding me! That's just insanity.
That's
you have to at least dilute it a little.
It's
like a shot. You might as well just just have straight up milk and sugar. Like, why even add the coffee? What's the point?
It's like that Office episode where Michael, like when he had the Michael Scott Paper Company, and Pam asks if she has any coffee, and he goes, cream and sugar, and she sips it. Wait a minute, is this just cream and sugar? That's what I said. So it was just it was wild. I don't know if that was like, I tried Googling it. I think either they just misheard me or whatever, but they said they put 10 cream and 10 sugars, and I was like, this is insanity. Like, I don't know how you would even think anyone would ask that normally, but yeah, they didn't know the double terminology, and so that was my Canadian ignorance, and I got what I got. It's like if you try to order a rye and whiskey here versus a rye and whiskey in Canada, they'll give you something completely not what you would expect. So I always have to specifically name the whiskey when I order that same drink in the United States.
Yeah, I can't send that back, unfortunately, because that is what you asked for with the double getting 10 cream and 10 sugar. All right, that'll do it for this edition of Rink-Wide Toronto Post Game. As the next post game show will be on Tuesday, the Maple Leafs returning home to take on the Florida Panthers, and we'll have another post game pod for you. Make sure to like, review, subscribe to the pod wherever you get your favorite pods, and you can follow us on Twitter at RinkWideTOR, at DAlter, at RobWong34. For David Alter and producer Aaron, I'm Rob Wong. You've been listening to Rink-Wide Toronto, sponsored by Bodog, Canada's home for casino games and sports odds, where everyone goes to play. You've been listening to Rink-Wide Toronto, pregame, postgame, every game.
Hey, it's Ray Ferraro and Darren Drager from the Ray and Drakes Hockey Podcast. Drakes, we're getting into your favorite part of the year. It's insider season.
Yeah, the March 3rd trade deadline is in sight, and general managers' phones are ringing as front offices are trying to figure out what they're doing, buyers, sellers, and the storylines, Ray, and the trade rumors, they're blowing up now across the league.
Yeah, we got it all covered, Drakes, along with the top hockey guests, twice weekly, here on the Ray and Drakes Hockey Podcast. Check us out everywhere you get your podcasts.